Paul would write, or I'm sorry, Bill Watts would write that Paul Bosch was pretty upset with Watts over this sale and eventually had to pay Watts out for his percentage of Houston when Bosch sold to Vince. What was the relationship like between Paul Bosch and Bill Watts? And do you think it was fractured a little bit over the sale, or was it always kind of tenuous because we're promoters?
I think it was always kind of icy, trustworthy. You know, Paul was a very smart man, but he'd been in the business forever, had saw every con man, every promoter, et cetera, et cetera. And Bill saw Paul as a very wise, somewhat cagey guy. Paul was a brilliant promoter. He got over more than some of the talents in Houston because of all his charity work and his TV commercials and all. You know, he discovered Mattress Mac.
Yeah.
I've been in the studio when Mattress Mac was doing his commercials. Jim Mac, he's a great guy and rich. God, is he rich? All in selling furniture. So, but what a good dude. But Paul hooked up with him, I.W. Marks, I think it's called I.W. Marks Jewelers.
That's right.
So, he just had relationship after relationship. So he knew how he's like Sam Muchnick, probably not as outgoing. Sam was not as outgoing or charismatic as Paul. Paul liked the spotlight. Well, I know when we did commentary, we did it with a stick mic, one stick mic, no headsets, sitting at ringside in two chairs. And then when he wanted me to talk, or he allowed me to talk, he'd lean the mic over toward my mouth. But I could be in the middle of a sentence, and he'd take the mic away because he wanted to talk. It wasn't a great partnership, but I learned a lot from him. You know, he's a smart wrestling guy. Every situation I found myself in might not have been ideal. We may not be having holiday dinner together, but if I can learn something from your ass, I'm taking it. And I learned a lot from Paul Bosch on how to and how not to do some things. But Paul sure was unhappy. Cowboy resurrected Paul's business in that regard, all those Mid-South guys. You know, JY got over, Rock and Roll Express got over huge. You know, it just was, and it was rugged and physical. So it worked out pretty damn good. So I enjoy going to Houston. That's where I discovered Whataburger. I should put a monument on that date or something. But anyway, yeah, it was good.
You wrote in your book, now the way I see it, I continued, is if you were to buy Watts out, you could have yourself a Super Bowl, except you'd own both teams. Crockett's face wasn't telling me much, he wrote. I didn't know if he was interested or not, but I was in now, so I decided to keep going. Quote, you keep your show on TBS and you put UWF on there too. You have your NWA guys win an equal amount and your UWF guys win an equal amount until you cash in once a year with a super show, pitting one league against another. Boy, that sounds like something we've heard before and much later in wrestling. And here you are pitching that idea, and Crockett's response, how much? I expect McMahon will have interest, but we're coming to you first, I said, ignoring his question. How much? Crockett asked again. Bill's $2 million price tag was on the tip of my tongue. $4 million, I said. Crockett nodded. My personal split was going to be 5% of the overall sales price. I brought up the number to give me some room to negotiate. I could see Crockett wanted UWF. He wanted to double his efforts to compete with Vince, and Watts had 120 individual television contracts that would be hugely helpful in that regard. My percentage of a deal would give me room to plan my own next move. I wanted to go home, but I had nothing to go home to. Tell Bill to call me, Crockett said, as he and Garner left the room. Man, look at you. The ball's of steel here. He wants 2. We're going to ask for 4. Let's give ourselves some room. What a meeting, man.
It's called being a businessman, Conrad. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of fans are so used to seeing me with a black hat on, broadcasting matches. they're unaware of this aspect of my career.
Right.
But it was interesting times, and it was, I wouldn't change a thing.
You wrote, after they left, I waited a respectable amount of time to make sure both men were gone before calling Bill from a payphone. This time I had a calling card and didn't have to call collect as Gene Kaniski did. This was twice what he asked for. And just as importantly to a stubborn, prideful man like Cowboy, this was a respectable way out of the wrestling business. He wouldn't be seen as beaten. He would be seen as someone who sold his company at a price he couldn't walk away from. Bill, I said, as Cowboy answered the phone, and in the middle of an airport terminal in Atlanta, I told the man who brought me into the business that I just sold the company which started my career. This is like a best case scenario for you and Bill at this point, is it not?
We thought so. Yeah, we thought so, Connie. We found a solution. What was it the best solution, Conrad? I don't know. Should we have negotiated? He said, Bill and his people negotiated a better price when it come down to the nitty gritty and the nut cutting time. Maybe, but this is how it went down. And I regret the fact that Cowboy did get all his money, because that meant, guess who did get all their money?
You.
Check.
So when you're in there, discussing 4 million, you never write that it came up what you're going to do. What did you think you were going to do? Like, if they're buying your job out, like, did you have an idea of what you would do?
No, but I wasn't worried about it.
Right.
I have skills. I was a successful advertising person. I just built a television network. I got broadcasting experience. So maybe Crockett brings me with him, which he did.
In hindsight, do you think anything would have been different had Watts tried to sell a year earlier? Like, if he'd have sold in 86 instead of 87, would that have changed anything for him or the Crockett's?
Might have, because the economy kept getting worse.
Yeah.
So you want to get on the front side of the decline. That might have helped, might have done it. But there's a good chance that what you're suggesting is true.
With the benefit of hindsight, is this one of the biggest achievements in your career? Like, to be able to pull this sale off?
You know what? I've never really thought of it that way. But now that I'm older, with opportunities like this to speak about it, it brings back these memories and the skull sessions and the strategies and the game planning, because it creates those memories. It might be. It's one of the biggest things I've ever done. I can't think of anything administratively
right
that I've ever done that was as impressive as this on hindsight. So, but things just fell into place, I guess. You try to come up again with a solution. It's a win-win. And I was successful in accomplishing that. I got my part done and got the hell out and turned the other stuff over, the heavy lifting, to the guys who are a lot smarter than me. So, but I guess it is kind of, I never looked at it that way. So, but maybe so. I'm not downplaying it all shucks or something. But, putting it in your terms, it may be. I can't think of anything that was more significant in the big picture overhaul and how all those things, I look on Peacock and see tons of material that I was on back in the day. So it's provided content, yes. Everlasting content. And it's a unique commodity. It has value. And for those things, I'm very proud.